Parents forced me to give my $5,000 inheritance to my sister for her business. Then she sent me pics from her launch party to rub it in my face, so I decided to take revenge. I, 17F, was forced to give away the money that I had inherited from my grandmother a couple of months ago to my older sister so she could fund her business dreams. My older sister Connie is 6 years older than me and has always bullied me because she just seems to have something against me for no reason. The truth of the matter is that she bullies me because she can. She knows that she will get away with it, like she always has right from our childhood. My parents already told me not to make a big deal out of things, and whenever I would complain to them about Connie and her behavior towards me, they would tell me that I was being sensitive. It was now that I realized it was just my parents gaslighting me into believing that this was normal behavior by older siblings, and I have nothing to be upset about. But I can tell you guys for a fact that Connie was much worse than other older siblings because she was not messing around with me, and what she did to me was not harmless. Obviously, when we were very little, there was always her trying to put me down with her harsh words, and my parents telling me to shut up, but never saying anything to her, even though it was she who was making me cry. That was horrible in itself, but at least it was just verbal. But this particular incident that took place when I was 13 was what made me realize that she didn't just dislike me, she actually hated me. My family and I had driven to the beach, and Connie had brought along a couple of her friends with her. She was 19 at the time and had come back from college for the weekend, so she and her friends were spending all their time together. Things had been particularly nasty for me because for some reason her friends seemed to hate me just as much as she did. I guess they were all suffering from the same kind of mental disorder that made them hate people who had done absolutely nothing to them. Anyway, they had constantly been putting me down, making cutting remarks about me, and just giggling every time I was around. I had gotten sick of it, so I decided to take a break from them, and was just sitting by myself alone on the pier, with my feet dangling over the water. Then, all of a sudden, I felt a plastic bag being shoved over my head, and somebody kicked me in the back, so I fell into the water. It took me a good couple of minutes to come to my senses and realize what was going on. Then I saw my sister and her friends running away, laughing, while I splashed around in the water. Thankfully, I'm a good swimmer, and as soon as I recovered from the shock of it all, I took the plastic bag off my head and swam back to the shore as fast as I could. It was the most troubling incident that has ever taken place with me, and when I got back to my parents and started crying about what had happened, my sister and her friends tried to pass it off as a harmless prank, but the worst was yet to come. My parents actually laughed along with them and said that I was just overreacting, since I always had been a crybaby. They said, my dad even joked that all those swimming lessons had finally paid off. But the truth is, the plastic bag they shoved over my head was small, and I could have asphyxiated and died. If I hadn't managed to come to my senses and remove the bag in time, I might have drowned. So many things could have gone horribly wrong, yet they found it all amusing. I had always known that my parents had a favorite daughter, and it definitely wasn't me. After that incident, I decided that I could no longer see them as family. My only goal became to study hard, get into college, and eventually get away from these people. I realized I couldn't trust any of them. Since then, I've kept my distance from Connie, but unfortunately, I still have to live with my parents, so I've had to pretend to get along with them. This was also why I ended up giving away the money I inherited 3 months ago, even though I didn't want to. My grandmother, my dad's mother, passed away about a year ago, and 3 months ago we finally received the inheritance. She left her house and most of her money to my parents, while Connie and I each received $5,000. Additionally, I was given a sapphire ring that I had once admired, and my grandmother had joked that I could have it once she was gone. I planned to save the money for my future, but then my parents told me that Connie was starting her own business and needed to gather as much money as possible. They were already helping her, and now they expected me to contribute as well. I didn't think it was fair. It was her business, so why should I have to pitch in? Especially considering that she had treated me with nothing but cruelty my entire life. I refused, but after a few days of arguing, my dad threatened not to pay for my college tuition or let me come back home once I left. That scared me, and feeling overwhelmed, I eventually gave in. It probably wasn't the best decision, but I was under a lot of pressure and didn't think it was worth fighting them any longer. My finals were approaching, and I needed to focus on studying. So, to keep the peace, I agreed to give up my inheritance. At least they let me keep the ring, probably because they didn't realize it was a real sapphire. In the will, my grandmother had only referred to it as the ring with the blue stone, so I kept quiet, knowing it was valuable. I handed over the $5,000 and put an end to the argument. 3 months have passed since then, and I've been accepted into the college of my choice. I'll be starting in a few weeks, and my parents are keeping their promise to cover all my expenses, including tuition, since I'll be living away from home. They're going to cover all my expenses, so I guess giving up my $5,000 wasn't such a bad investment after all. Now, I don't have to worry about money while I'm in college. Everything has been going well for me. Technically, it still is, but I feel really guilty about what I did. A few days ago, my sister hosted a launch party for her new store. She's partnered with the same girls who pushed me into the sea with a plastic bag over my head and found it hilarious. Now, the 3 of them own a massive shoes and accessories store. It's pretty basic stuff, but they think they've done something revolutionary, and their loyal followers are definitely going to be shopping there. There was a chance my sister could have had a successful career ahead of her, but I ended up doing something after she sent me a bunch of photos from the launch party to rub it in my face. Of course, I wasn't invited to the event. My parents told me it was an adults-only party, and since I'm 17, they couldn't take me. That was clearly just an excuse, but I didn't want to go anyway. However, the day after the party, Connie sent me several photos and a text saying that since I had missed her fabulous event, she wanted me to experience it through the pictures. To be extra cocky, she added that she couldn't have done it without my help, referring to the $5,000 I had to give up for her. For some reason, that really got under my skin. Then I noticed a guy in the background of some of the photos. I immediately checked my gallery to confirm my suspicions. Even though he had grown some stubble and put on a bit of weight, I could still tell it was her high school ex-boyfriend, Simon. Simon started dating her right after she turned 18, even though he was 25 at the time. He had gone to the same high school as us, but of course he graduated long before Connie. They had struck up a friendship online when she was 16, and he literally asked her out on her 18th birthday, which I thought was pretty creepy. But Connie found it romantic. Thankfully, our parents acted like normal human beings for once, and told her they didn't approve of her dating someone who had been waiting for her to turn 18, especially since he was already in his 20s. But she didn't listen, and continued seeing him secretly. He was working at his dad's company back then, but after just 8 months together, they broke up because he was moving to Wyoming to work on his uncle's farm. Apparently, his father had caught him trying to steal from the company. Connie was devastated, and that's when our parents found out she had still been seeing him. She came home begging my dad to help Simon get a job here so he wouldn't have to move and break up with her, but my dad refused and forced her to block him. My parents made Connie promise she would never speak to Simon again. The house was in chaos that day. Connie was begging our parents not to make her break up with him, promising that he would change. Meanwhile, my dad was furious, yelling at her for not listening to them and getting involved with someone who was clearly in trouble. My mom just kept crying. No one involved me in any of it. I was told to stay in my room and not come out, but I kept hearing Simon's name being thrown around, so I decided to stalk him on social media. When someone causes that much drama in your house, you don't forget their face easily. So when I saw him in the background of Connie's photos, I instantly decided to get back at her. Connie and my parents never treated me like part of the family. They were pretty open about discussing their business plans around me, so I knew a lot. For example, while my parents were easy to convince, her friends' parents weren't as sold on the idea. They had trouble getting the last parent, a single mom, to invest in the business. She was skeptical about putting so much money into a store that sold only shoes and accessories. She wanted her daughter to get a job, gain experience, and then revisit the idea later to avoid making a bad investment. Connie and her friends were determined to make the business work, though. They had decided to move forward with the money they had, and if the business took off, the third friend's mom would invest later. But they knew they needed the first few months to be a huge success. They only had enough capital to last a couple of months, and after that, they would definitely need more investment unless, by some miracle, the business started making enough money to sustain itself. Realistically, though, it was unlikely they would break even so early, especially since they were so small scale, and the fashion market is tough to crack. I knew that the single mom just needed one excuse to back out of the deal, and I knew exactly what would push her over the edge. So I reached out to her through a fake account and asked her to call me because I had something important to share about her daughter's business. I made sure she called me using Facebook's call feature, so I wouldn't have to give her my number. I had to wait a couple of hours. She was probably skeptical about whether this was legit, but eventually curiosity got the better of her, and she called. When she did, I told her all about what I had seen and who the guy lurking in the background of the photos really was. At first, she didn't believe me, but I managed to convince her that my job was just to warn her. It was entirely up to her whether she still wanted to invest in the business. Then, I hung up, sent her a couple of old pictures of Connie and Simon together, and left her to decide for herself. I guess the mom decided to back out of the deal and even told her daughter to do the same, because since the day after I made that phone call, things have been intense. Nobody has any idea that I was behind all of this, but Connie has been desperately calling our parents, trying to get them to convince the mom to come back on board. Her friends are also furious with her because they can't believe she hid something like this from them. To make things worse, Connie is back together with Simon, but she lied about who he was so no one would recognize him. Even our parents are disappointed in her. To sum it up, Connie is in deep trouble. Everyone in her life is mad at her. I thought I would enjoy watching her struggle, but for some reason I just can't. I know this business meant a lot to her, and now I'm wondering if I was too petty, and maybe what I did was wrong. I overheard our parents talking about how disappointed they are, and they're even considering pulling out of her business as investors because she broke their trust. This is serious because they almost never get upset with her, so it's a big deal. But still, this doesn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. So, am I the bad guy for sabotaging my sister's business by getting a potential investor to back out because she bullied me as a kid? Update 1. Hey, thanks to everyone who responded to my post with advice. I guess you guys are right. I might have too much of a conscience to enjoy this. But I'm doing the smart thing and keeping my mouth shut about what I did because if my parents ever found out, they would literally throw me out of the house. Since I'm going to turn 18 in a couple of months, there'll be nothing stopping them from doing that either. I'm relying on them to pay for my college expenses, so I really can't afford for that to happen. It's been a week since I made my post, and things have gotten much worse for Connie. The mom who backed out convinced her daughter to do the same, and now it's just down to the two of them. But Connie's other friend is very upset with her and is demanding that they split the business shares 60-40 because her trust in Connie has greatly diminished after learning about this secret boyfriend who stole from his father's company. Connie had introduced Simon as a guy she met on a dating app a few months back, but after her friend's mom revealed the truth, she stuck to that story. But no one believed her anymore. She even tried to claim the images were fake, saying someone might have photoshopped them to make her look like a liar. Now, Connie has been visiting our parents almost every day. They're scolding her for what she did, but they're also still trying to help her. Every evening, the three of them meet with their lawyer to try and find a way for Connie to keep her shares in the business. There's a strong chance they might have to shut down if they can't resolve this conflict quickly. And I don't know how I'll feel about that. But honestly, I've decided to just avoid thinking about it altogether. The only good thing that's come out of this situation is that because Connie is in trouble, nobody really pays attention to me anymore, so I can come and go as I please. And I'm literally doing whatever I want. It's been nice, as it's really taken the spotlight off of me. Even when Connie visits, she just ignores me because she's too wrapped up in her own situation. My parents don't say anything to me either, so this is how I'm spending my last few weeks at home before I leave for college. It's been great so far. I don't have to answer to anyone about what I do during the day. Honestly, I feel like even if I didn't come home for a few days and spent more time at a friend's place, my parents and Connie wouldn't even notice. Like I said, this is the one good thing that has come out of this situation, and I'm hoping they leave me alone until I'm finally ready to go to college. I'm also crossing my fingers that this situation doesn't impact my parents' decision to pay for my college expenses, something I hadn't really considered until typing out this post. If it does, I'll be screwed, but at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing that Connie has it worse than me. Update 2. So, almost 2 weeks have passed since my original post, and up until last week, nothing involving me had really happened, so I thought I was safe. But I don't think so anymore. A couple of days ago, I guess the woman I called finally gave in to the pressure and told Connie how she found out about the past connection. She didn't tell Connie everything, but she did mention that she received an anonymous phone call and a couple of photos, which is how she discovered the truth. Connie isn't even trying to hide the fact that she knew Simon anymore. Everyone has figured out that she didn't meet him on any dating app and that the pictures were real. After she found out there was an anonymous phone call involved, of course, she thought of me first. Yesterday, when she visited us, I had the misfortune of being downstairs because I was just about to head out to hang with a friend. But then Connie stormed into the house and shoved me as hard as she could when she saw me. I lost my balance and my temper, so I shoved her right back. Then she grabbed me by the hair and started screaming in my face, saying she knew it had to be me who made that phone call and that she was going to make sure I paid the price for it. I was panicking inside, but I couldn't let it show on my face because I didn't want her to figure out the truth. So I started yelling back at her, denying everything, and said that I wouldn't even know whom to talk to, considering I had only met her friend's parents once, when they all came over for lunch a few weeks before they opened the store. Of course, I was lying through my teeth, but I tried to make it sound as believable as possible. After a few seconds of us screaming at each other, our parents intervened and finally pulled us apart. But Connie insisted that she didn't believe a word I was saying. She was sure it was me who ruined her chances of having a career in business and demanded that I let her and our parents go through my phone and laptop. I had mentally prepared for this, knowing it was coming, but I still threw a fit about it, because if I just agreed, it would seem suspicious. Anyway, I had nothing to be scared of, because I had wiped all my devices clean of any evidence that could point to me being the one who made that anonymous phone call. Besides, Connie assumed I made the call from my phone number, not from a Facebook account that I had created specifically to contact her friend's mom and then deleted, so she was way off base from the start. Even when she and my parents went through all my accounts on different social media platforms, they couldn't find anything. When she didn't find any proof to back up her claims that I had told her friends about her past with Simon, she completely lost it. She started yelling at me, accusing me of wiping my devices on purpose, and insisted she knew it was me. I argued back, telling her she was losing her mind because her business was falling apart, but that didn't give her the right to take it out on me. Eventually, things calmed down a bit, and she started crying. I thought I was in the clear, but that's when my parents decided to talk to me. They said that even though they couldn't find any proof, they believed Connie because she seemed so certain. And besides, there was no one else who could have known about this. Even though they had been at the party and seen Simon, they hadn't recognized him, so it couldn't have been them. That left just me, since Connie had sent those pictures with Simon in the background to annoy me, and it was obvious I might have retaliated. Then, the thing I feared most happened. They told me that even though they couldn't prove it, they were convinced it was me, and they were canceling their plan to pay for my college expenses. They said I was on my own now, and they didn't want to hear any more arguments about it. I started screaming and crying, but unfortunately nobody cared because I wasn't Connie. After about half an hour of begging, screaming, and shedding a lot of tears with no response from them, I finally went back to my room, shut myself in, and started writing this update to distract myself. I still have the sapphire ring that my grandmother left me, and I could sell it, but I'm not sure it would cover all 3 years of college, So now I'm considering taking out a student loan and asking someone in my family to co-sign, because there are only a couple of weeks left until the deadline for making the payment, and I can't risk missing it. Even if I can cover the first semester by selling the ring, I'm not sure about the rest, and eventually I'll have to figure something out. Update 3. Hey, so a lot has happened since my last update. It's been a month, and let me start by explaining what's been going on with me. I left my parents' place a couple of days after my last update because now that they weren't paying for my college, I had no reason to stay with them or keep in touch. I packed my bags and went to live with a friend of mine. I had already talked to her about it, and she told me I was welcome to stay with her and her family. She was taking a gap year, and after living with her for a few days, she and her parents told me that she wanted to start working at her dad's business. So she didn't really have any interest in going to college in the first place, but her parents did have a college fund set aside for her, which I could use for the time being. I tried to decline, but they convinced me. They've known me for a long time and said it was as good as sending their own daughter to college. Honestly, I was in no position to refuse such an offer, so I accepted it. Even though I'm sure they don't expect me to pay them back, I'm determined to make sure I do. I'm on campus now, and I didn't even have to sell my grandmother's ring, so I'm incredibly grateful to my friend and her parents. As for Connie, things didn't turn out well for her. She ended up selling all her shares in the business, and now her friends own the store entirely. She had to cut her losses and leave because it became clear that no one could trust her anymore. Unfortunately, my parents couldn't do anything about it since it was completely out of their control. Connie is probably upset because this entire venture was her idea in the first place, but I guess she should be relieved since I don't think the store is going to do well in the future anyway. But that's none of my concern anymore because I've cut off contact with them. Now, I'm just going to focus on my future.